Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Jason Wright Show, Mindset Monday. So today's episode is brought to you by Rian Doris. And what I mean by that is I'm ripping off one of his emails that he sends out weekly that I have come to actually look forward to. And let me tell you something. It is really hard for me to find a newsletter or an email that comes on a regular basis that I've subscribed to that I actually look forward to receiving. However, Rian has hit the nail on the head, at least with me. And today's message from him is going to be on productivity. And I love this hack because I've actually found myself in a place where I have the equivalent of about 4 jobs. And within one of those jobs, I'm running 3 different organizations simultaneously. And it's overwhelming. I don't care how seasoned you are. I don't care how long you've been at this. I mean, I'm 50 years old, have about 30 years of entrepreneurial and leadership experience at this point. And still, it doesn't get any easier whenever you're tasked with a lot of different things to do all at once, and you want to do them well. So trying to be incredibly productive is one of my foremost goals, but also being able to leverage energy in a way to where I'm able to better prioritize, make better decisions, and know exactly of the plethora of things that I have to work on, what are the things that are most important. So on today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about this email that I got from Rian Doris that I thought was really, really great and profound in that it talks about how it's not the quantity of time that we focus on tasks, it's the quality of time, and it's setting some definite parameters and boundaries and guidelines about how we use our time to be most productive. So anyways, it's really, really great. So real quick, I want to give Rian a little more credit and let you know who he is. So in case you want to check him out, he actually has a website, riandoris.com. Check it out. You can learn more about him. And Rian Doris is the co-founder and CEO of Flow Research Collective. Flow Research Collective is his and Stephen Kotler's organization that studies flow. They do some of the best coaching and research on the concept of flow state. I've learned a lot about flow, and it is a scientifically valid method of learning, of productivity. And so I highly recommend you checking it out. Also, while I'm at it, might as well put in a plug for Stephen Kotler and his books. They are fantastic. Catching Fire, I think, was one of his most recent ones that actually had to do with flow. His first book, which I really recommend, is The Rise of Superman. And what he did in that book, he's a journalist by trade, and he started researching a lot of extreme sport athletes. And he followed them, and he wanted to figure out what is it that separates these individuals that make them willing to make life-threatening feats to go after things like base jumping and big wave surfing and all these just crazy, crazy sports that always put their lives in danger, but they always go back to it. What is it? And what he found was it was the fact that they found themselves in a flow state, which is almost just this. I compare like a kind of a fictitious idea of flow is Bradley Cooper in Limitless. If you've seen that movie where he pops the pill and all of a sudden he can supposedly use so much more of his brain all at once to where he's able to just do quadratic equations and all this crazy stuff really quickly. It's really cool. And so that's kind of like what getting in a flow state does. It makes you just hyper-focused, and you understand how to use the neurochemistry that you have, that all of us have in our brains, to utilize it into such a way that we're able to create this neuro cocktail that just makes us so focused, so much more productive. And what's important about that is, one, the output of your work is not only higher, but it's better, and it doesn't require as much time. So that's really more than I wanted to go into flow state, but something you might want to research also. So anyway, he's the co-founder and CEO of Flow Research Collective, the world's leading peak performance research and training institute focused on decoding the neuroscience of flow states and revolutionizing the way we approach work. So check out Rian's work. I think you'll be glad you did. So let's get into this email that he sent. A few years ago, a friend of mine raised $10 million to build the company he had always dreamed of. Support came from every direction: friends, family, investors. He was living his purpose, working 12-hour days, head down, all in. Then he got Lyme disease. His nervous system collapsed overnight. Chills, fever, cognitive fog. 3 focused hours a day was the max his brain and body could handle. The rest of the day, he was in bed. But something strange happened. He started getting more done. The drop from 12 hours to 3 didn't tank his results. It amplified them. His priorities sharpened. He saw what mattered. Tasks that used to feel urgent evaporated. Delegation became non-negotiable. Every move was deliberate, not wasted motion. It was like he put on productivity goggles and allowed him to see what mattered in stark relief. This wasn't just anecdotal. It was neuroscience in action. What happened to him has a name: work compression. You've probably heard of Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the time available. Work compression is the inverse. And now I want to talk a little bit about that. If you notice that, let's talk about Parkinson's law a little bit. Work expands to fill the time available. Have you ever noticed that if you have, like, imagine, go back to your old days at university. If you had, we all get a syllabus at the first of class, right? And we know all of the assignments that are going to be due. And so we could, in fact, go do a lot of self-study and self-research to get that work out of the way, get it done. But we don't, do we? No, we expand the work into an entire semester. If you have 3 weeks to prepare research on a certain topic, then you're probably going to stretch the work out into a 3-week period. If you have an 8-hour workday to do a project, you're probably going to let that work fill the 8 hours. We have an amazing way of taking tasks that could be done in a very short period of time and letting that work fill the space that we have. That's something that's really odd that we do. I know I do it quite frequently, but then you look at right before you go out of town, look how much work you get done right before a vacation. If that same work, if you weren't going on vacation and you had the following week that you're going to be on vacation to do the work, I would venture a guess the work would expand into that extra week. But instead, we compress it, we get it done, we knock it out. So that's the idea of the work expanding to fill the time that's available. Work compression is the inverse. Work contracts to fit the time available. The work compression protocol works like this. Pick your current weekly work hours. Cut them by 20 to 30%. Then lock those reduced hours inside a hard boundary, a clear start time and finish time. No spillover, no late nights, no weekend catch-ups. Whatever doesn't get done inside that box doesn't get done. At first, it feels brutal, like working with one hand tied behind your back. I want to pause here for a minute. This is something that I've actually kind of done accidentally just because I refuse to work late at night. I refused to pull all-nighters when I was in college. I refused to be the guy that stays at the office all night, that has to get to the office at the crack of dawn to get work done. I just am not going to do that. Not because I'm lazy. I'm anything but. I get a lot done and I work hard and I do a lot of things that I don't have to do. But there are certain things I'm not going to compromise on. So one of the things that I've always done, and this is kind of verifying that what I've done actually is pretty smart, which is kind of shocking for me to have done anything smart on accident. But whenever I made the choice to draw a line that I am not going to be the type of guy that stays at the office till 10 o'clock. I'm not going to work on Sundays unless there is the rare occasion where I might have to do some work on a Sunday, but it's very rare. I'm not going to do that. So therefore I'm going to make the work fit the time that I actually have. The only way to pull off your work with fewer hours is through things you'll naturally gain as a consequence of work compression: clear prioritization, relentless elimination, effective delegation, cleaner communication, better preparation, and faster decisions. And the fastest way to gain these skills is to remove the crutch of time. Work compression is what finally breaks the illusion that more hours equals more productivity. And here's why it works. Perceived importance drives flow. The first benefit of work compression is clarity in the form of perceived importance. With less time, your brain starts automatically filtering for what matters. It it feels like magic, but it's backed by research. Flow researchers Michael Barthelmess, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and Johan Keller found that when you perceive a task as highly important, you pay more attention, invest more effort, and are more likely to enter flow. Again, this is why I think you should research flow state. It is a powerful tool. I know, and you've been in flow. All of us have been in flow at times. You might not have identified it as such, but you've been in it. And once you learn to fall into flow purposely, it's magical. It truly is. It's a great quiver to have, or a great arrow to have in your quiver. I highly recommend understanding how to get into a flow state quicker. As a matter of fact, the Navy SEALs actually work on this. Stephen Kotler and his team have worked with the Navy SEALs to help them figure out how to drop into not only a personal flow state, but a group flow state quicker and faster, because they're just so much more effective. Let's continue. That's not a mindset. It's a neurobiological mechanism, and it only activates when you can't afford to waste time. This is why wildly productive people don't work 1,000 times more hours. They just see more clearly where to put their effort, and they protect it. Challenge skills, balance kicks in. Flow requires a challenge that slightly exceeds your current skill level, about 4% harder than what you're used to. I want to sit on this for just a second. If you are performing a task that feels just a little too hard, now I'm not talking about something, it's not like Jason Wright trying to do quadratic equations. That's too hard. That's overdoing it. However, if you have a task that's just a little too hard, it's stretching you just a bit, that's where you're on the verge of falling into flow. It's very important. Less time equals more pressure, but the right amount of pressure creates stretch. You start hitting that 4% zone consistently. The brain shifts from stress to drive. Your skill response ramps up to meet the demand. Flow becomes more frequent and more intense. But there's a threshold. Stretch. Don't snap. You want to make the work tighter, not trigger collapse. That's why the time compression needs to be fixed and non-negotiable. Not a new form of pressure you try to outrun by working late. Recovery is no longer optional. Flow follows a 4-stage cycle: struggle, release, flow, and recovery. And that's why it's hard to admit, but most of us, the human brain, I think all the research I've read says that we can really, really focus deeply. Not all of us, but people that can really, really zero in for about 90 minutes. That's where we start to really peak out as it relates to focusing hardcore for long periods of time. So you have to know that at some point, there's just going to reach a point of diminishing returns where you have to just stop. The work is going to suffer. You're going to suffer. So you have to move on and get out. Most people get stuck in the struggle phase because they never allow for real recovery. They half work all the time, answering Slack in bed, refreshing inboxes during lunch, guilt bleeding into every break. That constant low-level pressure creates chronic cortisol and blocks access flow. Cortisol is the hormone that's released by stress. And I'll tell you, on a personal note, where I really find this is whenever I start trying to respond to emails on my phone. There was a time whenever I just completely deleted my email apps off my phone to train myself to not answer emails by phone, because if you do that, your brain doesn't know the difference between when you've answered 3 emails or 30 if the 3 emails that you've answered happen over 10, 20, 30-minute increments. It feels like you're doing it all the time. And if you're doing that while you're driving down the road, which is very unsafe for one thing, and then secondly, you're just not truly focused, you might respond quicker when you shouldn't. You might, it might be one of those emails where you just kind of fire it off when you could have sat on it. You should have let it sit in your draft folder a little longer. And I'm talking to myself on this one because it's one of the biggest problems I have. And also what I do is I end up hating email and not responding to emails and not even checking email. Whereas there is a dramatic difference whenever I sit down with focused time and say 10 minutes of nothing but email. That's it. I'm focused. I'm sharp. In 10 minutes, man, I am laser focused. I'm thinking better. My responses will be better. I'll remember to let Gemini polish my email before I send it out. I will remember to save the draft instead of just firing it off. It is such a good tactic. When you draw a hard line around your work hours, you create space for real recovery. And real recovery is the only way to consistently get back into flow. When I first implemented work compression in my own company, it broke me the first week. One day, my alarm went off mid-email. I still had half a sentence to write. Every instinct said, just finish it. It'll take 60 seconds. I do this all the time, by the way, y'all. I do this all the time. I do have a little timer that I set for 15-minute to 25-minute work increments. And I have this I do this. I break this rule all the time. I'm going to try to not do it, because what I do, the alarm will go off. I'll ignore it and keep working, because I'm like, no, I'm in flow. Let's just keep going. I don't adhere to that rule. I'm going to try to get better. But I shut the laptop and walked away. This is Rian again. He shot his laptop and he walked away. It felt insane. But the next day, something clicked. That open loop sharpened my brain. It forced a better, simpler solution. The tension became fuel. Within 2 weeks, I was working 1/3 the hours and producing 3 times the results. And by the way, you know who used to do this very thing? I guarantee you he had never heard of a flow state, because I don't think it had been labeled as such back whenever he was writing. But he practiced this very thing. That was Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway, now he would probably write for a lot longer periods of time, but he always wrote with more to come. Like he would stop mid-paragraph, stop even mid-sentence, so that he was almost pulled back into where he was when he left off. So you think about it, I mean, as an author of that caliber, he was in a flow state when he was writing his stories, and he would just stop, and he wanted to stop when there was more to write. He did that on purpose. He didn't keep writing until he's like, okay, I'm finished. And you know why that's smart? I've done this as an author myself. Whenever we try to write until we're finished, then what we do is we start to just focus on the getting finished instead of writing something really good that you're passionate about and you're really in a flow state and you're really focused. And so you'll end up you'll just start rushing it just to get it done, just to finish it. And that's what Ernest Hemingway never did. He always came back and started up fresh where he had left off with still some gas in the tank. Very smart. So next, how to run work compression step by step. Step 1, define your current weekly work hours. Be honest. Total up every hour you typically work Monday through Friday. Step 2, cut your weekly work hours down by 20 to 30%. If you normally work 40 hours, drop it to 30. If you work 50, drop it to 35. Pick a reduction that feels like a real constraint, but not so extreme you snap under pressure. Step 3, never work your newly allocated hours. Draw a hard boundary around those hours. Set them in your calendar, share them with your team, and most important, respect them yourself. The magic of work compression only occurs when you force yourself to not work past the compression hours you've allocated. Step 4, watch what breaks and fix it. This is where the real work begins. You'll notice what can't fit, what shouldn't be there, what needs to be delegated, what was busy work all along. Let the discomfort guide you. Step 5, let the constraint build capacity. Week by week, you'll get sharper, faster, clearer, and you'll build the exact skills that multiply your output without multiplying your stress. So remember the rule for work compression. Subtract hours, multiply output, and let the increased access to flow state that you'll get do the rest. I think this is such a good message. I hope you'll try it. Set some boundaries around those work hours. Try to do some work compression. And I can tell you, again, I've done this sort of haphazard in a haphazard way. I'm going to try to be more focused, and I'm going to do this as an experiment for the next 30 days. I'm going to do exactly the steps I just told you about, see how it works out. I hope you'll do it with me. So get focused, find a flow state, get more done in less time. And not only that, but get better work done in less time. Have a great week. I'm Jason, and I'm out. Well, that does it for this episode of the Jason Wright Show. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a Texas Titan Media production. Fourth Wall did the music. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Please consider going out to jasonwrightnow.com and signing up for the Vitruvian letter. Also, please go out to iTunes. It takes like 30 seconds to just leave us a 5-star rating. It does wonders for the podcast. I would be so grateful. And with that, until we meet again, go crush it and endeavor to improve always in all ways. I'm out.